What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the channel. We finally have transfer confirmations to talk about. Celtic have made their first signing of the January transfer window, and he's here. He's back. It's Jota. He's signed a 5-year deal until the summer of 2030 for £8 million. We talked about it last night, and people getting the jitters about what the delays were over the weekend. But rightly, we thought that it'd probably be concluded on both ends today, and it was around 1 o'clock today. Celtic confirmed the return of Jota, and about half an hour later, Rennes confirmed the permanent signing of Kyogo. So Jota's in, Kyogo's gone, and we got some sort of update on Kieran Tierney in terms of trying to get him back this month. So we'll talk a wee bit about that later on. But first of all, Jota, he's here, back on a permanent basis at 25 years of age. I've seen a lot of people saying this, and I feel the same. It does feel a bit surreal when he left back in the summer of 2023. It was kind of out of the blue, £25 million move. No way the club could turn that down. It was to Saudi Arabia, which I think at the time we all probably questioned in terms of how good a football move that was for him and his career. But there's no doubt financially it was too good an offer for him to turn down. But I think today when you hear his quotes about being back at Celtic, the one that stands out for me, he said lots of things about the ups and downs that he's faced in the last 18 months, but the one that stands out for me above all else is, I need a place with soul where I feel at home. And I think that sentence tells you everything you need to know about the challenges that he's faced in the last 18 months. Celtic has soul, and there's no doubt that he's loved here, and he's probably not felt like that since the moment that he left, because I think in terms of all the factors you would weigh up as a football player, in terms of how Saudi Arabia was for him, I think in money terms it'd have been amazing. Obviously, he's probably looking at his bank balance thinking, this is an incredible amount of money that I'm earning based on what I was on at Celtic. A huge difference. The weather might even have been better. I know there was some big name players over there that he'd have been training with, but ultimately, was there any soul there? Was there any love? Did he feel any love? Was he playing in front of 60,000 people every single week? Were they singing his name? Probably not. In fact, certainly not. That certainly wasn't the case for him. So to come back to Celtic where he is loved, where he's going to get that adulation, but also, most importantly, talking about his time in Saudi Arabia and his time at Rennes, albeit short-lived, he wasn't playing very much, and that's what it comes down to as a football player. When you take everything else away and strip everything back, you want to be playing football, you want to be developing, you want to feel like you're becoming a better player and you're contributing towards success for your team. He's been on the fringes in Saudi Arabia, he's been on the fringes of it at Rennes, and coming back here where he knows he's loved, where he had great success in his 2 seasons here with us before, I think it's a no-brainer for him, and I think he obviously feels that sense of, I suppose, gratitude that he can come back to a place like this where this is as good as he's had it in his career, and he probably feels like he'll treasure that more this time around because he's been in 2 different places in 2 different countries, and hasn't experienced anything like it. That is one thing that we sometimes talk about when players move on from Celtic, and it sometimes might sound a bit sycophantic, but sometimes for players it doesn't get much better than Celtic. When you're adored, when you have the success, when you win the trophies, you play in the Champions League, it's very difficult to go on and go to a higher level and really push on. If you look at the players who have left Celtic over the years, nearly all of them in pursuit of that, going to a higher level, really pushing on and trying to play at the highest level at a big club like Celtic, maybe in a different league. There hasn't been tons that have gone and done it at a much higher level at much bigger clubs than Celtic. So it's brilliant to see Jota. He seems buzzing to be back. I'm certainly buzzing to have him back. If we talk about some of the stats from the first time he was here, he made 83 appearances over those 2 seasons. He scored 28 goals and had 26 assists. That tells you that he's got quality, and I think the thing that stands out above just the basic numbers in terms of his quality as a player and as a winger is that I think he's of a dying breed. He's a maverick, he's a bit of a showman, he's a brilliant dribbler, he's got that piece of individual quality that you love to watch when you're there in the stadium. It gets you off your seat. Those players are becoming fewer and further between, and I think to get him back to Celtic at 25 years of age, signed a 5.5-year contract until the summer of 2030. Whether or not we'll have him for that whole contract is to be seen, but there's a serious likelihood that we're going to have him for his peak years. If we get him to 26, 27, those are the peak years of his career, and I think that could be huge for Celtic. Again, you don't have that usual risk with a player. I know that there may be an element of doubt about coming back and will it be as good as the first time round, but when you've seen it before, we actually had this with Jota after his loan move. We thought, will the club go and pay £6.5 million to Benfica? And it was a no-brainer because it was almost de-risked by the loan spell, because you could see the quality. It worked. He fit in well with the style of play. He really settled in here quickly, so it seemed like a no-brainer. I think that's the same this time around. It's technically his third spell, I suppose, if you count the loan and then the permanent transfer the first time around. But I think this is a great move, and he spoke also about Brendan Rodgers and the conversations he had with him before making the decision to come back. He said they were really honest, and it was clear that the manager believed in him. And again, we know that Brendan Rodgers really values those relationships with players, and I think he can really push Jota on. There's no doubt he's going to take a few weeks to adapt and get up to speed. He hasn't played a lot of football at all, but he's definitely got the quality. He's got an abundance of talent, and I think Brendan Rodgers is the perfect manager for him to work with. So I'm absolutely buzzing to see him back in a Celtic jersey. It obviously won't be against Aston Villa because he can't be registered for the last game of the league phase of the Champions League, but I would expect to see him involved at Fir Park on Sunday, and then I think we've got Dundee and Raith Rovers next week, all games which I think he can play a part in and build up towards his match fitness. But I'm buzzing to see him back at Celtic, and I can't wait to see him in action at the next possible game that he can play in. Kyogo, his transfer was also confirmed to Rennes today. We've talked at length about that in terms of mourning his exit, certainly mourning it for me. It's a shame it ended so abruptly for him. He was here today, gone tomorrow. I suppose that's how football works. 99 times out of 100, he clearly wanted to move on and go for a new challenge, which is fine. He was a brilliant player for us. He was the standout player. He was the headline act of an era for Celtic, and we'll never forget him. I think we'll miss him. I think he'll get better as the years go by, and we see some strikers come in who are maybe not at that level and maybe don't have that infectious energy or that quality in terms of coming up with big goals at big moments in big games, because that was where Kyogo really excelled in the big games in Europe. In the games against Rangers in the cup finals, that's where he had so many huge moments in a Celtic shirt. So we will miss him, but he's joined Rennes on a contract till 2027, and we can move on now and really push on to pursuing a striker to replace him. We've talked about Kvistgaard in the last couple of days. No new news on that again. In terms of today, I'd really like to see it ramp up in the next 48, 72 hours though, because we don't have long left in the transfer window. Could we see a backup option to Kvistgaard and then maybe pursue that in the summer? I don't think that's what the club should do. A loan move possibly is where we could end up if we can't get a deal thrashed out quickly enough with Brøndby. I don't think that's ideal though, because you could end up in a situation where the loan player does work out and then you're choosing between him and Kvistgaard in the summer if that is what it's to be. But listen, we'll wait and see with the striker. That is the utmost priority for Celtic in the next week or so. Moving on then, the Kieran Tierney saga continues, I suppose. We've talked a lot in the last few days about how unlikely it seems that he's going to come in January on loan now, because he's been more involved at Arsenal. They've maybe had a couple of injury problems and suspensions in that area of the pitch. He has been coming off the bench. He has been playing a part for them. But today, Sky Sports did say that Celtic are expected to make a loan approach. We've had a lot of that this January in terms of news items that say Celtic are expected to make a bid, Celtic are expected to make an approach. It can't go on much longer expecting to make approaches. We're going to need to make bids. We're going to need to see if these things can be done in the next few days, because there's only a week left of the transfer window. Zinchenko, his future is also in doubt at Arsenal. I think there's obviously going to be implications there for Tierney possibly. I know they've got a lot of players in that position. Lewis Skelly has emerged there, and that could mean that Tierney is allowed to leave this month. But just as I say, the perception of it, going back to the start of January, you think he's barely been involved at all. it seems really simple and a clear path for him to come back to Celtic in January. But as the months went on, he's played slightly more minutes, and now it's just not clear at all. So we've got a week to go. We're expected to make a loan approach. Will we get it done? If you were to push me just now, I would doubt it. Again, we talked about this at length this month. I'd be buzzing to see Tierney back. It just feels like it's not going to happen quite this month. I expect him to come back in a pre-contract. I think that's clear now, given the number of reports on it throughout the course of this month. But we'll just wait and see if he is to come in the door in January or not. I think left back, as I say, is now moved down the priority list behind striker, because we've lost Kyogo, who's a big player for us, played a lot of minutes, been the first choice striker. Now the big priority is trying to replace him. We were also linked today with Odense centre-back Tobias Slotsager. You need to be careful how you say that one. Denmark under-21 international, out of contract in the summer. This seems like a player who has good potential. I haven't seen anything of him yet, but it seems like we're monitoring him. If he's out of contract, might be a good move for us if we think he's got potential to come in and grow and develop. And at a young age, he can be in that sort of age range in 3 or 4 years' time where we can sell him on for a huge profit. But I think there's a number of clubs interested in him, according to the reports today. And like I say, this month, certainly not one for this month, it will be for the summer. And centre-back, I think, is fine for now. We brought in Trusty in the summer. We've got Scales there as well. I know we've let Stephen Welsh go out on loan, but we brought Dane Murray back to sort of cover that area of the squad. Don't think there's anything happening centre-half this month. It's all about striker and possibly Kieran Tierney at left-back as well. But that concludes the 2 deals that we were waiting on. We were waiting all weekend with bated breath, and finally yesterday's video about all the rumours that were circulating online about failed medicals and the stock exchange no being open and all of that can be put to bed now. Jota's here. We're buzzing to have him back. Can't wait to see him in action for Celtic. And Kyogo, his permanent transfer has been confirmed. So that's it for tonight. Like the video, comment with your own thoughts on today's developments below, and I'll see you tomorrow for the build up to that huge game in Birmingham on Wednesday. Thank you.